Hi everyone. I thought today I would share my journey, like what's got me to where I am today, how I kind of stumbled upon the health coaching certificate that I'm completing. And today's the 3-year anniversary of kind of everything starting health wise for me. So, started out um, end of 2017, was having some shoulder issues, had a stressful event at work. Of course, as a nurse, everything is stressful, but added stress with an interaction with a colleague that kind of contributed to that. Prior to that, I had been having some dry eye issues, some issues with that. I had to go to these lovely glasses, which used to them now, but I prefer my contacts, but cannot get those in my eyes, especially this time of year when it's super dry. So ended up um, that was the Christmas of the Snowmageddon 2017, where I was working. Stressful day at work to begin with. Looked outside, couldn't see outside. Snow was coming down. Anyone that knows me knows that driving in snow is not fun for me. It's top of the list of what is stressful in my life. Went in the ditch in the past, a couple times almost in the ditch, but definitely adds stress. So work stress, not feeling the greatest health wise. Snowmageddon and at work again had an incident that happened. Go into the beginning of the year, another stressful event at work, had a stressful day at work, 6 patients, some of those that are very needy. Didn't drink enough fluids, I think was part of it. And that next day was January 12th, and it was a day where they're predicting freezing rain. So my stress level, as you can imagine, was up high. Felt like I was going to pass out at work. Couldn't really figure out what was going on. Didn't feel the greatest. Ended up leaving work. Luckily, my parents were in area and they actually came and got me. We got home and ended up drinking two 24-ounce bottles of water on the way home and three Powerade that night before I finally started feeling a little better. So definitely dehydrated. Skip forward, went to see my PCP, couldn't really figure out what was going on, went to numerous specialty doctors. My favorite was when I went to see ENT and they did all the fun tests and they're like, something's up, but it's not your ears. I'm like, okay, thanks, I think, moving on. But sometimes you have to rule out things, obviously, until you kind of figure out what is going on. Was having stress issues, so I did start seeing a counselor through work with that, and she just happened to come across an article when I was kind of talking about my symptoms about POTS, which is a form of dysautonomia. So I looked into that more, realized I had a lot of those symptoms: the brain fog, the Raynaud's. You get in the shower, feel like you're going to pass out every time. All kind of made sense. So we did pursue that with my PCP. Ended up doing a test called a tilt table test, worst test I've ever had to go through because it was positive, but it kind of mimics what I feel like when I feel like I'm getting dizzy or potentially going to pass out. So I got the diagnosis of my dysautonomia. It's called neurocardiogenic syncope. It's a big long word, but it's pretty much a vagovasal response. So if you hear about the soldiers that are standing at attention for too long and they pass out, it's kind of the same thing with me that potentially could happen. Knock on something, I haven't passed out yet, but it's always a possibility. So on certain medications for that. Happened, got at work again, got my tilt table test back, and before I really saw anybody was working. Benefits to working in a hospital, right? A cardiologist came up on our floor, and I'm kind of grabbed him and said, "Hey, who in your practice knows stuff about dysautonomias?" Just happened to have a newer doctor that had come up from Pittsburgh. Guess who was on that day for EP, right? So he sees a patient across the hall. Once again, can I bug you? Can I ask you some questions? Had my first consultation with him in the hall. But he's now my cardiologist, so it all worked out from that standpoint. And then saw a newer eye doctor, um, and she suggested that maybe I had Sjogren's, dry eye, dry mouth. Of course, I get all the blood work done. Everything's negative. So we kind of pursued it still even more after the dysautonomia diagnosis, and then I had one little blurb in my blood work that kind of said maybe this is something autoimmune. So we pursued that more. Saw a rheumatologist, the greatest, been in practice for 30 years, unfortunately, has moved on from the Erie area, but he said I was 80% positive. He was 80, I should say. He was 80% positive that I had Sjogren's. Had the fun lip biopsy, those that I work with. That was the day I looked like someone beat the snot out of me. My lip was huge, bruised, and that's because they had to actually manipulate it in to get the biopsy. But that came back positive for Sjogren's. So an autoimmune disorder. So yes, the only thing tough enough to kick my butt is myself, but that has caused some other chronic health issues. So with that, I actually took myself on the journey of kind of figuring out what to do health wise to get myself to not feel so crappy, that fatigue, that brain fog that's unfortunately today I'm flaring a little bit. Working night shifts, a couple night shifts will do that. Stress on your body, right? But that brain fog where you get out of the shower and you have no idea if you wash your hair, no idea. You're trying to think of a word and there's literally nothing there. It's the worst feeling ever. Some of you that unfortunately have gotten COVID kind of know what that feels like to more recently, or even the flu in general, more recently when you have an autoimmune disorder that your body is just constantly fighting something. So you feel like you have the flu. That general feeling of malaise is awful. But kind of got through all that and then ended up totally lost my train of thought talking about brain fog. Ended up that I found the autoimmune protocol diet, which is my go-to, the AIP diet. Talked once again, got at work, talked with a patient's daughter the one day, and she's like, yeah, I strictly follow this diet and most of my symptoms are gone. Kind of the nudge in the right direction. So it is a very strict elimination diet. But I've, through the last year or so, I've figured out what works for me. And that's kind of the whole point. We're all different. We're all um, process things differently, process the proteins, the carbs and fats all differently. And we need to figure out that balance for us. For me, I do have a sensitivity, at least right now, with gluten, dairy, and some nuts and some nightshades. So I avoid those. I know if I eat that, I'm going to feel like crap. It'll flare all my symptoms for my autoimmune disease, and that's not fun. So it's easier for me to avoid those kind of foods, but recently realized that maybe something was off a little bit as well. So I've gotten my own coach. She's an AIP certified health coach, and she's helping me figure out what foods might be causing more gut issues, the lovely bloat, the constipation, sometimes the brain fog. So we're working through that, and I have completed sessions with a counselor. Been a year and a half now since I've seen somebody, but she has definitely helped me through my stress, made me realize different ways to look at things, especially at work, the work-related stress. I do meditation. I use the Calm app. Personally, that is my go-to. Just recently realized that they have soothing, relaxing music that is all Disney songs. So that is my go-to. For that, finding ways to relieve my stress. Most of you might know that hockey is my go-to. Unfortunately, pandemic has kind of put a squash on in-person hockey, but I'm finding different ways to relieve stress. Do stress eat better with that a little bit, but it's changing. My habits, these little things here and there that have gotten me to the point where I feel pretty decent with my chronic illnesses. So I just wanted to share today kind of what I've been through, what I've learned is why I'm in health coaching. I learned how stress, if you don't manage it, will, affect your body in bad ways and can cause chronic health issues. It can literally slowly kill you. So I had to combat that. I had to figure out ways to decrease it as best as I could, and then, move on from there. Sleep, not the best sleeper at times, so I'm using tips that I've learned with that. Getting to bed on time, like an actual bedtime for adults, and then getting up at the exact same time if you can, depending on your swing shifts. That will help you get more sleep. So all those things that go for you having a healthier lifestyle um, I've kind of learned on my own and realized that that's where I want my career to go, my life to go, is to actually be able to help people kind of figure out what works best for them. Obviously, I don't want people to have to do a strict elimination diet. That is not fun, but I know it works for me. So that's what I want to help people find health wise. What works best for you? Figure out your own body, listening to your own gut intuition, and discovering the best version that you can be. So that is my goal on the next year, is to continue on my health coach journey, also continue on my own health journey. So I do have a depth of knowledge, especially work related stress, chronic stress, what it can do to your body, acute stress that adds on top of that, and then obviously changes in diet and habits. So, if you have any specific questions, thoughts that you want to share, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and I will respond to them. And I want to thank everyone that's kind of listened to me over all the years. I'm obsessed with food. Everyone knows I talk about food a lot, especially at work. Hopefully, changing that into some tips that will help you overcome your stress. But thank you to everyone that's kind of been with me through this journey, kind of supported me through all the ups and downs, and dealing with my not so good days and not being able to do as much as even I would like. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm looking forward to the future. As we said, setting intentions for 2021, put it out there in the universe, and it will come to you. So thank you everyone for listening.